Of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Also know I'm a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. And man, it seems so foreign here. It's been like last Wednesday since I did my last epic conversation. Took a little downtime from doing some epic conversations and just realize that when you're in the focus for a goal and a dream, part of that time needs to be some downtime. It's not that you're quitting or anything's bad. You need some of that downtime. So we are back. Also know I'm a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications. And we have another new friend on the Dr. Vibe show tonight, the home of epic conversations and the place of epic conversations. D'Juan Hopewell is a career advocate for oppressed people. His work has been instrumental in passing major legislation in the Maryland General Assembly, including marriage equality, the DREAM Act, and retirement security. His anti-hunger work resulted in an unprecedented funding increase from the legislature toward school breakfast programs for children. He currently runs a blog, hopewellthought.com. Definitely visit it, and contributes to the HuffPost and Blavity.com. His current focus is an entrepreneur creating jobs on the south side of Chicago. He is going to be sharing with us tonight a great article that he wrote a few weeks ago called "How Can We Have so much hate for Umar but love for R. Kelly?" ? But welcome to the Dr. Vibe show for the first time and hopefully not the last time, D'Juan Hopewell. How are you, sir?
Not bad, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it that it came down from your downtime in that other beautiful city that you shared with me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, this is good, and D'Juan has a love for Toronto. I did not know about it until he's been here twice, and he said hopefully sometime in the next 10 years he's going to come live here. So we're looking forward to him coming down or coming up or coming across to Toronto and hanging out here. And I will certainly do what I can to make it a happy transition. Mr. Hopewell, before we go any further about your great article, can you share some background about yourself with our audience?
Yeah, so I grew up, really my roots are in the Black church. My dad is a preacher, and my mother, I have 3 siblings. We were raised a very religious home, but within that, again, this is the Black church experience. So there was always that hint that it's more than just heaven, right? There's something here on earth that we should be doing. And I did undergrad at Ohio State, and then I ended up going to seminary, and I started studying public policy for a PhD at Mass Boston some years back. Really, my career got going in politics accidentally. I wish I had a sexier story, but in fact, the Great Recession hit, and I was just unemployed. I ended up getting work on a campaign, and one campaign led to the next 6 or 7 or however many. So I did a lot of work in politics, a lot of work with advocacy, and working on causes that are pretty important. And at a certain point, you kind of realize that you're not seeing what you really want to see. And my heart has always really been for oppressed people, particularly people who look like me. And people challenge me on that. They say, well, do you only care about Black people? And my response is, Moses cared a lot about his people. I don't think he was a bad guy. Right?
Good comeback. Good comeback.
I don't think he was a bad guy. So I just started writing. Like, I had all this stuff in my head. I wanted to get it out. I started writing. A friend of mine encouraged me to start my blog, hopewellthought.com. And over the last couple of years, I've just kind of grown that platform and started contributing to the outlets. And what I saw was the need to really look at job creation and really organizing capital. And so that's more of my focus these days. And so, like I said, we're looking at how to create a massive employment base on the south side of Chicago, and that's what I'm currently working on. That's a different conversation for another day, but that's me in a nutshell. I'm just a guy who really cares a lot.
So, I got to ask you, what was it like growing up a preacher's kid?
Well, we didn't go out much on Halloween. There was that.
I figured that.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, when you say preachers kid, like there's different types. My folks are classical Pentecostals. So that's the real hardcore stuff. Like, that's not just Christian. That's like, we're going to go really deep on all these expressions of Pentecostalism, from speaking in tongues and everything else. Like, it was just a weird childhood. Like, when I look back, it was actually quite weird. At the time, it was normal. But, you know, my parents were actually, within their circle, they were considered liberal, right? So a lot of people around us thought that we were heathens because we played baseball, we did all these other things that were secular. So, my parents were careful not to make us complete weirdos. But it was a very different childhood. But I will say the benefit of it was so many people in the neighborhood respected my parents that it kept me out of trouble. In other words, if I wanted to sell, I didn't have the opportunity because no one in the neighborhood let me. Like, nobody, when things were happening, people would literally say, hey, Hopewell, you all have to go. Like, you all have to go. You can't be here. Because they respected my parents. So looking back, I mean, as weird as it was and maybe strict or overly strict at times, there were also some good parts about it. So it wasn't horrible. But I was actually a good preacher's kid. I know, despite the stereotype, I was a good kid.
Well, look, I'd like to thank everyone who's joined in on the live conversation. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. Please feel free to ask D'Juan any questions you have. Like he did say, he is also doing work in regards to Chicago and making Chicago a better place. We had a conversation on that before we went live. I'm hoping that he promises to come back and talk about that on a separate conversation. But tonight we're talking about two non-controversial people, Dr. Umar Johnson and R. Kelly. So, you know, but let me ask a little bit more about the growing up. So, institution, was it Ohio State you mentioned?
I went to Ohio State for undergrad.
No, you can't say Ohio. It has to be the Ohio State University. Remember that.
I only say that when I'm trying to be obnoxious because it is a little bit obnoxious. Like, you know, they do this thing, it's the, like, you know, it's, come on, man. We all know what school is. Just calm down. But you know, here's the thing. I've never understood why people go so hard for their alma mater. And I'm going to tell you why.
All right.
At least in the States, it doesn't make any sense. If you think about it, you go to college, they took all your money. Like, why do you root for them? Like, go for the other guy. Like, they took all your money. You should not be that much in love with someone who took all your money and put you in debt for the rest of your life. Shouldn't have that much allegiance. That's just my own personal theory.
Hey, no problem. Hey, you know what? You went there. You can own it. You can defend yourself against all the Ohio State University. Because I was told a long time ago, I have to say the Ohio State University. I said, okay.
I'm really serious about this. It's a thing. Like, the Ohio State University. Like, okay, all right.
Big time. So, how was education, going to school for you, all of that? Was it a good experience, not good experience? Any memories?
I hated school.
Wow.
Like, and you wouldn't know that because, like I said, I started school when I was like 4. And go through high school, obviously, went straight to undergrad, and then I went straight to grad school, and then went straight to a PhD program. Like, I never took a break. But I actually hated I hated school. In fact, when I was in high school, I vowed to not go to college. My thing was, I was going to come up with a great business concept, and if I came up with that great business concept, then I would do that instead of going to school. I just never came up with a great idea, so I had to go to school. I just didn't have a better idea. So I go to school, and I should never be like a graduation speaker because I was the worst student. I was a decent student in high school. I just never really worked that hard. I just kind of got by, so I was kind of a B average. I did the same thing in undergrad. I graduated with a 2.74 GPA. Again, I just kind of got by. Grad school was a lot easier because I actually went to seminary, and growing up in the home that I grew up in, that was second nature, so I did pretty well there. By the time I got to the PhD program, I was just tired, and I dropped out after like a year. So I'm not the person to invite to a graduation ceremony. I'm just not.
Okay. Now, how did family respond to you dropping out?
You know what? The biggest mistake I made dropping out is that, well, it was a mistake. Here's the thing. I would go to class every day, right? And I was in a cohort of like 6 people. And they were just excited. Like, they would come to class so excited and just so alive. And I just wanted class to be over. Like, I was just ready for class to be over. So I would look around at this every day, and I was like, I think I'm in the wrong thing. I really do. And at a certain point, it was just like, at that level, at the doctoral level, you have to really be passionate and committed to it. And I just wasn't. And, yeah, I mean, Kanye West dropped out. He made an album. That's what I should have done. I just dropped out. Like, I just dropped out.
No worries there. Okay.
No, my mother, at first, she was upset about it because she, in her head, thought all of her children were going to get PhDs and all this kind of stuff. And eventually I said, look, yeah, this is just not me. I learned a long time ago that people want you to do a lot of things, but the only person who has to live out the consequences of what you do is you. I have to be miserable every day if I don't like my life. You don't. You need to go to bed and just feel great. I have to be miserable. And so I'm just not going to live my life because other people want me to do whatever. I had to learn that years ago.
No worries. So after you dropped out, what was your next move?
I was unemployed.
Okay.
I dropped out like at the beginning of the Great Recession. The timing could not have been worse. Like I literally dropped out as the economy was falling apart, particularly in the States and really all over the world. So for about 3 years, I was unemployed.
Wow.
I mean, 3 solid
3
years. I applied for work at McDonald's, Walmart, like dollar stores. I applied to work anywhere and everywhere, and nobody hired me. Like, nobody. And so I was sleeping on people's couches. I was staying with family. Like, it was horrible. And to the point that I literally contemplated taking my life because I'm a 20-something-year-old guy, got all these degrees and the debt to go with it, and nothing is happening. And, I honestly thought about taking my life for a second. I could not do that because I knew it would hurt my parents. I could not do that to my parents. So what happened was, one day I literally saw an ad on Craigslist, and it basically said, we need some black people to organize on a campaign somewhere on the East Coast. Didn't say where, what city, just somewhere on the East Coast. Long story short, I applied and ended up getting a position just temporarily as an organizer on a mayoral campaign in Baltimore, Maryland. That's how I got to Washington, D.C. area. I worked on the campaign as an organizer for a few months. After that was over, I had some friends from seminary, grew in the area, so I know that you wanted to be in D.C. for a long time. Why don't you just stay with us for a while, see what happens? And so I stayed with them for about a month. Nothing was happening. So I said, well, I guess I'm just going to go back to Cleveland. And the day that I said I was going back to Cleveland, the campaign manager for the campaign just done called me and said, the governor needs someone to work on this bill. We need somebody with a theology background because we have to talk to clergy about marriage equality.
Wow.
Can you do it? And he's, essentially he knew my background and how conservative my background was, so he thought I may have a problem with marriage equality. I have to be honest, like at that point, I didn't care if pigs were getting married. I just needed to work and show what I could do. Now, it didn't hurt that I had no moral objection, but that was easy to do. So that campaign led to the next one, to the next, and the next, and eventually I was doing well, making money, and actually having some impact. So it's just the craziest story that happened on accident, frankly.
You're not doing that anymore, correct?
No, I'm kind of out of the political game at this point.
By choice?
Yeah. So I'm really focused on, like I said, job creation in our community. Like at the end of the day, we can pass bills, we can talk about public policy. The greatest need as I see it is for power, right? And for people to have some degree of self-determination. That does not happen if you don't have the resources in your community. That does not happen if people don't have opportunity. We can talk about whatever it is you want to. Nothing works like a job. There's an old expression, nothing stops a bullet like a job. And so we even talk about the violence in Chicago. Again, the greatest corollary to violent crime is not race. It's actually joblessness. Okay, people who are gainfully employed are not shooting people. That's not how that works. And so if you can do something about the employment part, I think a lot of these other things work themselves out. So frankly, yes, public policy is extremely important. The political game is extremely important. But as for me, I did not want to commit my life to something that, for me personally, was not of primary importance.
Okay, it's okay. And you're doing what you're doing what you feel your purpose is, correct?
At this point in my life, at 30-something, I finally woke up and realized exactly what I want to do with my life. Yes.
Okay.
So it took a while.
No, hey, at least you found it, right?
Yeah, touche.
At least you found, because I'm sure there are many people you and I both know who haven't found their purpose yet, and they're still searching.
I think, so here's the thing, I think there are two types of people. right? Generally, there's two types of people. One person really doesn't care what they do as long as their lifestyle is whatever, right? As long as they can live the type of lifestyle they want, they have the amount of money they need, or type of house they want, they could take out trash for a living. They don't care. The other type of person very deeply cares about what it is they do, the cause that they do, all that kind of stuff. We're all somewhere on that spectrum. You have to figure out where you are. I'm way on the other end. Like, what I do matters. Even if you gave me $5 million a year to do something I don't care about, I'd be miserable. I couldn't do it. So first of all, you figure out what kind of person you are. Am I the kind of person who really, really cares about what I do and how I contribute to the world? Or do I just care about my lifestyle? And that's okay. That doesn't make you a bad person. Like, if you just ultimately care about your lifestyle, then your other things that you care about, those can be hobbies. Like, maybe you like interior decorating, you want to kind of do that, but you start doing that and you figure, I'm not making the kind of money that I want. Let me go back to my real job and just do this on the side. Like, that's okay. You need to know who you are. So I had to figure out that part and then figure out what is it that you really want to do. I knew I wanted to have social impact, but that can be in many ways. You could be an environmentalist. You could plant trees. You could do anti-smoking campaigns, right? But what is it specifically that really drives you that every morning you can't get out of your head? And for me, that was the condition of my people. That's why when I go out on dates, the first date is miserable because what's in you will come out of you eventually. And I start talking and these kind of things happen. And if you're not a person in tune with that, it's going to be a really awkward date. Like, you have to know who you are and what moves you.
Okay. Hey, nothing like being real, my man. I hear what you're coming from. You got to know, you got to work your purpose and know your purpose, and there's no better thing. This is one of Oh, sorry. You got to work your purpose, and you got to know what your purpose is, and that's one of the reasons why I've done this for as long as I have, because I enjoy it, and I've been told, and I feel that it makes a positive impact. I don't want just impact. I want positive impact that has legacy.
Absolutely.
So I fully understand where you're coming from. Well, let's get to the article, because we could chat all night and people are going to say, oh, they're not going to talk about Umar R. Kelly. So let's get down. Now let's get down to it. So first things first, why did you write this article?
I wrote this article because over the last probably 3 years, I have a best friend in the world, and it is a she. And she and we went to undergrad together. And we're really close. And she's a black woman. And what I have realized through my friendship with her, what she has forced me to realize, is the state of the world and how we treat women. I think oftentimes, particularly for black men, we focus on white supremacy or racism from white people towards black people. And like, we understand that, right? We can articulate that. What we fail to understand is our role as actually oppressing women, even though we are oppressed men. And so, like, through my connection to her, I started to realize that as men, we do have a certain privilege. And even if we think we're good guys, Dr. King talked about how most Americans are at least unconscious racist. Not that you're actively thinking of racism, but just unconsciously, it's just kind of infused in the culture. And I would say for most men, we are unconsciously sexist, even if we don't consciously try to be that. And so,
okay, hold on right there. We're going to have some fun tonight. We haven't got to the article yet, and the fun's already begun. What do you mean by we are unconsciously sexist? That most men are unconsciously sexist?
Yeah, I just mean without any effort, we do not think of women as equals. Without actively trying to be horrible people, we don't actively treat women as equals or value women as we should. Now, we could go up and down through public policy and look at how we treat women, how women are treated by the legal system. We could look at family law. We could look at a lot of, specific ways, but just in our personal interactions, it happens every single day. It happened the other week when I went to an auto parts store to purchase a part. And when I got to the counter, I noticed that there was a young woman working there. And without trying to, I thought to myself, I don't know if this is the right person to help me. Now, I have no idea what her expertise is or is not, but I just assume because she's a woman, she probably would not know as much as a man, right? We have to consciously challenge ourselves every day. It's in us, whether we want to admit to it or not. We do not treat women as equals, and specifically black women, we kind of put at the bottom. We've been programmed to do that. We've been programmed not to treat people as equals. And I try to challenge myself, and again, because of my relationship with this friend, I've learned to try to challenge myself consciously as to my thinking, right? It happens naturally every single day. It just does. So I'm sitting here watching the Roland Martin show the other week, and they had a panel. They invited Umar Johnson on. And what was really revealing to me is that he's a very controversial figure. I mean, he has some views on a lot of topics that people will take exception to, whether it be homosexuality or whatever else. But what drew the most criticism, what drew the most visceral reaction from that panel was his insistence that black men should be committed to black women. And I could not understand in this day and age why, given everything that they could have talked about, given everything they could have taken exception to, why was that the thing that Martin and his panel really chose to go take him to task for? It didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so I looked at that, and then a few days later, the R. Kelly story broke on him having this, I guess, cult of young women somewhere.
Yeah.
To me that the same society that allows R. Kelly to flourish is the exact same society that makes Umar Johnson the target of criticism for advocating for black women. And I don't think the two are unrelated. Like, it's the exact same world. These are not two different. This is the same world where this man, for decades, R. Kelly, he marries a child, Aaliyah, at the age of 15. He has all this stream of allegations that we found out that have been constant and consistent. And yet, no one's outraged. No one thinks this is a horrible thing. And his victims happen to be black women, young black girls, frankly. And then Umar Johnson says, yeah, I think black men really should take seriously being committed to black women. And that became a lightning rod for controversy, even with a black woman on the panel, Lauren Burke. And I just couldn't figure out why that bothers us so much. Why was it so important for this panel to advocate for black men's right to marry white women, as opposed to actually standing up for black women? Like, why was that such a controversy? And it has to do with the way that we order society. It has to do with the way that we live, where nobody stands up for black women over and over. So I give the example of we have the Black Lives Matter movement over several years. It's become a big thing. Well, that movement is based off of the killing of unarmed black men. And so there's this other movement, Say Her Name, because when black women are killed by police, nobody cares. Nobody marches. nobody rallies. Nobody does anything. We talk about, the pay gap for women, but no one actually takes the time to look at the numbers and realize there's actually a pay gap between black women and white women. Nobody says a thing about that. No one seems to care about all these things. And so with the R. Kelly story in particular, there was a journalist that actually did decades of research. His name was Jim DeRogatis. And so he looked at all these allegations for years. He went through court filings and that kind of thing. And what's interesting is he concluded, and I quote, nobody matters less to our society than young black women. Now, this is a white guy. And looking into these allegations against R. Kelly, that was his conclusion. If he can see that, then the rest of us should see that also. So again, I just don't think the two are unrelated. So I just sat down and started writing, and that's what happened. Why is it so controversial to stand up for black women, but so easy to abuse black women? I think that's a problem.
What do you feel are some of the root causes for this situation?
Well, again, I think we live in a man's world. From the beginning of time, like, male supremacy has been the norm. So when you normalize male supremacy, by default, somebody has to be the inferior party. If you are supreme, then this is inferior, right? The other party becomes inferior. Once that becomes the basis of your thinking, once that becomes the norm, everything flows from there. Whether it's the way that we pay women, equal pay becomes a thing. Whether it's the way that women are treated by the courts. Like, I'm going to get more time in jail for selling some weed than beating up a woman that I'm dating. Like, does that make sense?
No.
Like, I'm better off selling some weed than just beating the hell out of a woman if I'm dating her. Like, that only exists because we live in a society that just does not regard women as valuable. That's the only way we get to that point. So when you start there, everything flows from there.
But okay, so it's an interesting point. Now, many a black male has been raised, a number have been raised by mothers.
Absolutely.
And you would hope and think that the respect for women, the foundation comes from there. What, in your opinion, then causes the U-turn that you say is the disrespect for black women from black men?
Let me try to address your question. I want to size. Let me try to address this by reaching over here first. You make a good point. Yes, all these black men are raised by a bunch of black women, right? That's pretty obvious.
Yep.
Okay, well, we could go back to chattel slavery, and we have a lot of white children who are raised by black women. Why did they value black women? Like, they were raised by these mammies and that kind of thing. Why? What happened? What was the disconnect? Okay, well, from the time that I left your knee, you nursed me and you weaned me, and you know, as a young child, you helped me develop. Between there and growing up, the rest of the world steps in and does a massive amount of programming. Like a massive amount of programming. From the time that I was born until maybe 3 years old, I was primarily in the care of my mother. Well, at some point, she has to give that up. At some point, I have to go out to the world, whether it be pre-K, whatever. I go out to the world, and then the rest of the world steps in and programming for the next 30 years. Well, what did you think was going to happen? Like, what did you think was going to happen when she had 3 years to herself, and the rest of the world has me forever? Now, yes, I still live in her home. That's still my mother. But there's just way too much programming to overcome. It's just so ingrained into the society, it's inescapable.
A comment here by one of the special fans of the Dr. Vibe Show, Dominique, saying that in your comparison of saying you are better off selling some weed than beating a woman, says one is a victimless crime and the other is a violent crime with many victims.
Which one's a violent crime?
I guess the beating of a woman.
Which would seem to suggest that I should get more time in jail for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I have a non-violent crime with part to me, you're free to differ. To me, if I'm an adult and I sell another adult marijuana because they feel like smoking marijuana, I don't think there's any victim at all. Like point to the victim. For me, there is no victim. But as she pointed out, if I actually put my hands on a woman and beat her, that's very violent, and she indeed is a victim. How is it that I've got more time in jail for this one? And over that is the case, particularly in the States. I mean, there's just, the record is replete. Like, if you want to actually be violent and be okay, make sure you beat up a woman, and especially a black woman. Okay? Whether you want to talk about rape rights or anything else, if you want to be violent in this society and you want to get away with it, beat up a woman. And if you can, make it a black woman. Generally, that's kind of okay for people. And that's a problem. The fact that that's a real problem, and the fact that nobody's alarmed by it says something very deep about our society.
You make a lot of interesting things. We're going to have to see if we can get to the remaining part of the conversation. I know, welcome to Dr. Tachi. Welcome to the conversation. Another great live streamer, and just always plugging her great conversation she does 6 p.m. every Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Media Scope, where she talks all about media and culture. Check it out. She just celebrated her 2-year anniversary last week, and that's on Periscope. Let's get back to this conversation here. You make some very interesting statements in this wonderful article. You're saying that we have created a very unsafe society for black women. Why do you say that, and what is your proof? What are your, you said, quote, I'll quote you directly, we have created a world completely unsafe for black women. What are examples of that to you?
Sure. So, I mean, I talked about the pay gap for black women. Whether you want to compare them to white men or even white women, there is a gap there. Now, here's the thing. You may say, well, why is that unsafe? Well, if I can't actually provide for myself and my family, I mean, that is the ultimate assault. that is a direct assault on my ability to make a living and actually, be a normal person. That is a very, I think, tangible form of violence, if you want to carry it to that extreme. That's pretty extreme. Like, you're actually saying that I devalue you to the point that you can't even make a living. That's pretty extreme. I touched on the legal system. I touched on not just black women, but women in general. How we treat crimes against women, how we treat violence against women in our society. Again, It's just not something that we take very seriously. Now, if I want to sell dope, yeah, people take that very seriously. The legal system really cares about that. I will be put in jail for a long time. But look, if I'm Greg Hardy, a former NFL player, and I want to put my hands on a woman, beat her down, and throw her on a bed full of guns and everything else, I'll end up employed again in a year in the NFL. Like, that's the world that we live in. And again, how much more black women? So go back to the example of R. Kelly. This journalist dug up years and years and years of allegations against this man. I mean, these are families coming to the legal system saying, we want help. We want justice. He's going to have an amazing life and career, not all of that. Now, had he been alleged to have sold dope once or twice, do you think he would still be singing songs? No. It's just evidence, as this guy concluded, that no one matters less to us than young black women. Like, the evidence is there. Like, we only don't see it because we don't want to see it. Because if we saw it and we recognize it, then we would have to indict ourselves. So, like I said, when I went to the park store the other week, I realized that I was thinking, this person might not be able to behave strictly because she's a woman. I have to admit that I actually think that in my head. And that doesn't sound good to say in public. Like, it sounds bad, right? And I don't want to be bad, I'm a bad person. But if we really take it this seriously, we start to indict ourselves and then we have to change.
When you, and I'm sure you speak to black men about that subject, what is their reaction?
That's a really great question. First of all, I will say to you that I don't think that I talk a whole lot to black men about this.
Why not?
You know what? Again, I'm on the couch, and now I'm being taken to task. I don't think I talk enough to black men about this because, A, this is all new for me, and I'm wrestling with myself and my own demons first. And so I feel somewhat hypocritical for something that I just discovered last week and trying to take you to task for, right? I think that's probably part of it. I think, secondly, this stuff has become so normalized that I don't even necessarily consciously think to myself, I should stop this conversation and talk to Jimmy about his misogyny. Because, you know what, I like Jimmy. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. And so I don't think it's really worth rocking the boat and affecting our friendship to tell him that he has some views on women that are problematic. That's probably true also. Or sometimes I probably just don't even notice it because it's become so normalized that it doesn't even occur to me that something bad just happened. That's probably the most honest answer I can give. Okay.
I understand on that. But as you go down this road, this journey, is it in your mind to discuss this with black men?
I have to be honest with you. I've not even thought about that. And I don't mean to sound flippant or basic, but as you're talking to me, I'm feeling challenged and say, hey, why haven't I put more thought to this? Why haven't I put more thought to me saying more to... Well, let me say this. I'm very comfortable writing articles to say these things. I'm comfortable with that. I think where the growth needs to occur is what you're saying. What about the men in my own circle? Am I challenging them? Am I having conversations with them? And I'm not. And I don't even know that it was really on my radar until you just said that to me, as crazy as that sounds. Because I think that's far less comfortable. I'm comfortable sitting at a computer and typing stuff and sending it to the world. There's a comfort there. But my buddy Johnny, should he say something that I think is misogynistic and demeans black women, am I as quick to challenge Johnny in that way? And I don't think I have been. I don't think I have been, quite frankly. So again, I'm indicting myself.
Well, hey, you know what? And I'm not going to be hard on you, but I feel with having... Sorry. I'm not trying to be hard on you, but I'm just saying that with the platform that you have, you could be an agent of change. Because these conversations need to happen and don't happen enough, and these type of conversations or these type of articles are not... And I can tell you I do a lot of research on a lot of different things. I try to keep my eye on what's going on online, especially from a black men's perspective. They don't happen that often. So when you get the opportunity to express this thought process, it can go a long way. Now, again, with doing something like this, there's a responsibility, and then that's up to you on how far you want to take it.
No, absolutely. as I said, my best friend is normally the little, good angel on my shoulder that is pushing me and challenging me. And as we're having this conversation, you're now challenging me that I need to be intentional about this. I need to be intentional about not so much just writing about this, but challenging myself and challenging people in my network, or else the world just stays the same.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. That's the thing. Exactly. And I can at least think that you and I, at least one in common other than being black men, is we want to see change, especially in an area like this, big time.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm comfortable writing, and I'm even very comfortable challenging myself. But I think the next level of growth is, do you challenge the men around you? Because I think the two have to go together. So, for example, I talked about the Ray Rice thing, right? So Ray Rice had that whole thing. Everybody just jumped on Ray Rice and talked about how horrible of a person he was. And I wrote a piece back then, and I basically made the argument that we focus on someone like Ray Rice because it makes us feel better about ourselves. In other words, I don't do what he did, so he's a bad person. I'm not that bad, right? We do this kind of thing. But I kind of challenged myself in that moment to say, you know what, I've never put my hands on a woman. But how and in what ways have I abused women? And quite frankly, I've said things I think were very abusive to people, the women around me. So rather than pointing my finger at Ray Rice, I think a more constructive use of my time at that point was to say, the women around me are not going to be any safer by pointing at Ray Rice. The women around me are safer if I point to myself and look at how I've been abusive. But again, the next step in that is, what about the men around me that, frankly, are abusive? How about this? Do you have a friend who's cheating on their wife currently? I kind of do. Well,
I don't know. It either is or isn't. There's no, and to me, there's no kind of in that sort of situation. Either they are, or they aren't. So that's just where I'm coming from. Like let me say this. One of these situations where it's one of those situations where, let's say, there's a murder weapon. There's all this evidence that seems to point to you. We've not seen you shoot the person, so we can't necessarily charge you at this point. But there's a lot of evidence that really calls this into question, and so that's where it gets dicey. At that point, with all this evidence, as a friend, is it my place to say something here? Because no, you're not beating up this woman, but it looks at least very possibly like you are abusing her in other ways, right? Okay. And so, is that a place for you to speak up? Well, okay. So let's do a role play here. Say you are friends with R. Kelly. And so what if what is being stated that he does is true? What would you say to him? Do you want the truth or a lie? I want the truth. I don't know. I absolutely, and then let me tell you why I say that, and I know that sounds odd. The reason why I say that is it's easy, again, to sit behind a computer and critique. When there are actual connections involved, I don't know how I would feel about this person who were legitimately and genuinely friends. I don't know how I would feel. Because I have no connection to R. Kelly, I can just say, hey, I see some allegations, I see some violence in court, you look like a horrible person. That's really easy to do. Now, I just mentioned this friend who the evidence points to XYZ. Now I'm a little bit more hesitant because we have a history and a connection, and no, I didn't see you shoot this person, so I can't say you did it, so now I'm a little more conflicted, right? So this thing happens, right? So let's say I'm friends with R. Kelly, and all this is happening. In my head, who knows if it's true, but in my head, I think that I would go to him and say, listen, I read all this stuff, man. Is this true? Now, here's the problem. If he then says, no, that's not true, do I challenge that further, or do I accept that because we're friends? Okay, so let's take this down to the next alley. Say in the same situation, it was true. Okay. How would you address it with him? Or let's put it this way: the individual you were just speaking about. Say it was true. how would you address it with that gentleman, a person that you know?
So with this person, if it is true, and again, just saying that is because you have a relationship with their wife. You love these people, and this is, you're in the middle of this all of a sudden, or at least placing yourself in the middle of it. If it is true, then you say, again, I think this is what I would say.
Okay, no problem.
I think I would say, listen, I mean, we're boys. I love you. You've done a lot for me. We've been connected for some years, and I love your wife too. I love you both. You've been an inspiration to me. You've taught me certain things. This seems radically out of step with the values that you tried to give to me, that I've accepted and embraced. Help me understand this. Like, help me understand the person who really lifted me up and elevated me with all these great values, and now the life that you live. Like, help me understand this, because I'm not sure that I get it. And I'm hoping, when I say that, I'm hoping at least that there's some type of conviction on their part that they want to do something better with their life. But you know what? If they say, hey, it is what it is, I'm not really sure what the next step is. I really don't know what I say after that. I have no clue.
Okay, no problem. You know what? I'm gonna pull you out of the quicksand and change the direction of the conversation here. But so,
thank you.
No problem. But I appreciate you being transparent and being honest with yourself and honest with the audience. And you know, if people are watching live, hey, please give some feedback. We'd love to hear that, what you have to say, and any suggestions, etc. With this article, you feel that black men not take black women seriously, do not stand up for their rights. Why hasn't this situation changed? What's keeping it ingrained? Why isn't the black community not, in your opinion, taking R. Kelly to task? Because I have seen some articles written by black women saying, you know, R. Kelly should be taken to task. You're the first black male I've seen take R. Kelly to task. What does that tell you about the relationship between black men and black women?
Okay. This is complex. Let's deal with one side. One side of it is this. And again, I can't presume to speak for every black man in the world. But one of the complexities is when you say, hey, if you're a black woman, you come to me and say, you know, we need to get rid of R. Kelly. He's got to go. Or we need to get rid of Bill Cosby. He's got to go. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. But because I'm a black man and I experience racism from the other side, that part starts to interact with this part. Let me explain what I mean by that. When you tell me we have to take down R. Kelly because he's been alleged to have had these interactions, and we know for sure some of them with underage women, and that's bad, so we got to get rid of him. But we still have the Declaration of Independence, which is written by a child rapist, and no one's getting rid of that. And so we have Thomas Jefferson, who is literally raping children that he owns. And because we're not getting rid of that, I think sometimes for black men it's difficult that we will condemn black men for things that we don't condemn white men for. I think there's a certain psychological hurdle to get over there. Like, that is an actual thing for some of us. Let me speak for myself. That is a thing for me. Like, when I see this, and you say, well, we need to hold this person accountable, and they have to be, you know, castigated, whatever it might be. And then I see a litany of other white men who have the privilege to commit the same crimes without any, there's an ambivalence, there's a wrestling, there's a dissonance, there's all these things that happen. There's one part of it.
Okay, I'm just gonna interrupt you right there. Dr. Tachi says, using that logic, slavery should still be in effect.
I don't battle that. I'm not saying it's a good logic. I'm just being transparent as to what's happening in people's heads.
No problem. No problem.
I mean, I'm just being real. Like,
absolutely. No, and I'm just providing you the feedback, and I'm not, as I said, I like the interaction, so continue on. I just want to share what some of the audience is saying.
Right. No, she's right. Like, I don't battle that at all. She's absolutely right. I don't challenge that in any way. Now let's go to the other part of this. The other part of this is these black men that we're talking about who have not, you know, rallied behind black women or started some great prolific movement for black women. They didn't come from like black men in heaven. They came right here from planet Earth. They were raised right here in the Western Hemisphere. Again, they've been inundated from day one with male supremacy. And so that has been normalized. They don't necessarily see a problem. Like if you sat down and showed them the facts of the case and said, R. Kelly did this, R. Kelly did that, yes, people would make mental assent to the idea that that's bad. They would be able to say, oh, okay, that looks like a bad thing. But in your soul, does it bother you the same way as when you see racism victimizing black people? No, it doesn't hit the same way. It doesn't impact us the same way. It doesn't bother us the same way. So we don't have the motivation because it's been so normalized. We don't really see a big problem. Yeah, that's kind of bad, but it doesn't move you the same way when you see Philando Castile shot by a cop. That moves, that arouses some passion in black men. That really is, because you know what? That's me. I'm Philando. I'm the same like, oh, that affected me. Since we're not impacted by the oppression of women actively, we don't really care. Honestly, we just don't care. We don't. Like, let's just be real. Let's call it what we don't care. But when we see a white police officer shoot Walter Scott running away, that bothers us. We're not bothered by R. Kelly in the same way. So we don't do anything.
Interesting. Very
ugly truths.
No, it's very good perspective, good thought process, etc. It's all rolling right, and I understand where you're coming from. Let me get, what has been the reaction to this article?
Mostly negative, actually.
Okay, and okay. So what sort of comments and feedback are you getting in regards to not positive? That is.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different buckets. So one type of negativity is, for many people, they look at the title and it says, "Oh, how can we, hate Umar, love R. Kelly?" Well, who is we? Who is we? Who is we? In other words, I don't feel that way. That's not me. Well, it's interesting. Everyone is saying that, and yet R. Kelly has definitely had a nice, thriving career, while Umar Johnson certainly was taking the task. So I understand you as an individual saying it's not me, but everyone's saying it's not me, but yet this is the condition. So it's somebody. Like, this is a reality somewhere. So there's a hesitance to own it. There's a hesitance. We don't want to own that that's the reality. We don't want to own that that is the larger condition of black people. So there's that type of negativity. And then there's another bucket of folks who just say, well, I hear what you're saying, but I don't really see a big problem. Umar is praised.
Welcome back. It's Dr. Vibe here. We have to say big sorry for the technical issue, but we do have D'Juan back. He's got only a few minutes to spend with us. So we last left off asking him what has been the reaction to this article.
Yeah. So for the most part, there's a reluctance to own it. In other words, a lot of people look at the title and say, how could we have so much love for R. Kelly but hate Umar? Who is we? I don't feel that, so everyone says that I don't feel this way. Well, if everyone legitimately felt that way, then the world would not be this way. So I think there's a little bit of denial and delusion on our parts to some degree. And then, you have other people who essentially just say, well, I hate them both, without really engaging with the argument. I just think there's a reluctance to really engage with this argument because it just makes us uncomfortable. Again, if we really engage with it and own it, we'd have to endow ourselves. And then, of course, you get the typical internet trolls that just say nasty things for no reason at all, which I can't really follow. So I think mostly there's just not a lot of willingness to engage and really do a lot of critical thought.
Based on reactions to this article, what does What has this shown you or enlightened you on any areas of the black environment that you weren't aware of?
I would say, starting with the black woman, again, Lauren Burke, who's a phenomenal, great woman, who was on the show with Roland Martin. She was challenging Umar Johnson, which, again, as a black woman, just kind of shocked me that that was the big thing that she wanted to take him to task. Again, most of her energy, or most of the vitriol seemed to be for that. That, too, a lot of the other women that reacted to me, in the same way that I think oppression of black people becomes normalized for black people, even black men. Again, I want to be careful because I'm not a black woman, but I think to some degree, many women maybe have become used to the condition and they find it strange that people are pushing back. And that kind of shocked me. In other words, I had people who literally said, like, black women don't need your defense.
Whoa.
Okay, I get it. I get it. Okay, I understand. You know, you don't need a savior. Like, I'm not here to be that.
Okay.
But I found it strange that people would push back on my trying to articulate something and make a point in defense of black women. I just think we're so, I don't even know the word, like, we're just not used to it. And it's strange to all of us that when someone does it, it just rubs everyone the wrong way or something. Like, it was just, that to me was just strange. And I don't know that I have the vocabulary to really capture what I felt, but it was just really odd, the pushback that I got for, and again, it's the same pushback that Umar Johnson got in that instance. Advocating for black women is just strange to people, and you will get a pushback. People are much more comfortable advocating that black men have the right to marry white women than we're comfortable advocating unashamedly, unabashedly for black women.
So as we wind down here the conversation, what is your call to action for black people based on this article and the responses to this article?
What I would like all of us to do is to first be conscious about challenging ourselves and how we think of women and how we treat women. Like, just, again, just in the way that I was conscious in that auto parts store, challenging my view of this woman whom I've never met, assuming that she could not help me because she's a woman. That's step one. And then the next thing is, at some point, we all have to make a commitment to absolutely stand up for black women in every way that we can. I don't care if it's whatever it might be in our personal lives. How can we actually, as individuals, unashamedly, without reservation, actually just stand up for black women? And you'll find that it's strange to us when we just don't do it. And when you start trying to move toward that, it will be strange, because I personally, just myself, have realized at no point do I actually just really stand up for black women. So if you start examining yourself and how you view women, and then start to say consciously, okay, how can I actually stand up for black women? How can that become my normal? If you do those two things, I think by this time next year, you will be a little bit of a different person. Now, again, you've been programmed forever, so this will take time. It is, as we discussed tonight, I'm in the process of this. This is new for me. I'm trying to become a better person. I'm trying to get saved or something.
Right.
It's just, you got to start somewhere, though.
Now, that message was for black men. Do you have a message for black women when it comes to this?
I do, and this might be a completely different show, but
it will be.
As I've started on this journey, I've gotten a lot of pushback from black women who I said, I don't need your help, or whatever it might be. I think in some ways that maybe we've disappointed black women for so long. Not all, but I think some have given up on us to a degree.
Actually, I did a conversation in the past about that. It was very interesting, but may need to relook at it again.
Yeah, and so my question for someone in my circle who was pushing back on me, my question was, yes, I've done some things in the past that were not great. So now that I'm actually wanting to live a different life, do you just kind of want me to fail? Because I don't know that you seem to be willing to support me now. Maybe it's too late for me. I don't know. And so the question becomes, if there are men in your lives who are trying to make a transition, is there any way that you can support that? And that's a question for each woman to wrestle with individually. Is there a way that you can support that? And believe it or not, that's actually a profound question.
Well, you're providing more comment, but more homework for me to host more epic conversations. You realize that? But I'll make sure that you're involved in them. You're not going to get away that easy. You know that, brother.
Okay.
All right. Well, you know what? I'd like to thank you for taking the time to share with the Dr. Vibe family tonight. It's appreciated, not taken for granted, especially with a technical challenge. Again, it's more homework for me because I got some serious editing to do, but I'm looking forward to it. What's next on the horizon for you, writing-wise or activism-wise?
Well, like I said, I'm always writing at hopewellthought.com. I'm in the middle of a series about Uncle Tom's, essentially arguing that the greatest threat to black people is not Donald Trump or any racist, but the Uncle Tom that lives in all of us, and challenging that. And so we're kind of in the middle of that. I'm going to be posting the next installment of that in the next day or so.
You know, I'm emailing you to come on about that. So expect the email within the next 24 hours. Just warning you.
And the other thing, as far as activism, etc., I told you my focus is really we're building this company, and we want to be very intentional about hiring on the South Side, creating jobs, and that kind of thing. So we're finalizing a lot of the plans and projections, and we'll be raising some capital for that. That's what I'm really going to be committed to going forward.
Excellent. I will put all his contacts, social media-wise, on the post of the replay of this epic conversation. I'd like to say thank you, D'Juan, for making the time again to share with us and being transparent and honest, not only with yourself, but with our audience. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. I am Dr. Vibe. I'm host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of epic conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. Also know I'm a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. If you would like to catch replays of the epic conversations, YouTube-wise, just go to the Dr. Vibe Show YouTube channel. Now 210 subscribers. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Audio-wise, website at, well, I'll input the best way to contact me is either Twitter at drvibeshow, email address dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. Also, website address www.thedrvibeshow.com. If you want to listen to replays audio-wise of epic conversations from the Dr. Vibe Show website, you can also go to Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher Radio, The Goodman Project, and WJMS have selective audio conversations. Also, Google Play Music Store has the Dr. Vibe Show Epic Conversations audio-wise. As always, I'd like to say, if you want to get a complimentary 30-minute empowerment session with Dr. Vibe, touch base, because I believe the more empowerment you have in your life, the better your life will be and the better you can help others. And finally, remember, you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. Thanks for everyone who put up with this live. If you're catching the replay, you won't know what went on. But thanks so much to especially Dominique, as always, and also Dr. Tachi for making an epic conversation. And there was also a friend, D'Juan, who said she was enjoying the conversation. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith. And remember, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Thanks very much. Catch you soon. Bye-bye.